Hello there. I hope you're all continuing to buy your weekly allowance of Steel Cage Rage. Make sure you go check out that video about that supplement, that sponsor for this channel. But in the meantime, I've been busy writing a book about one of the interests I've had for years. I played college football 150 years ago. I was just very average, but I enjoy the game. I've always enjoyed the game. I've enjoyed statistics, strength conditioning. This is kind of my entrance into the strength conditioning world, was through football, college football specifically. And so I'm writing a book on the importance of defense in football and just the different angles like injuries and sports performance and importance of elite players and elite defenses over time. Just kind of a prospectus on defense. Just because I want to. I don't know if anybody ever read it. Nobody reads my other books either, but that's okay. I enjoy writing them, and this is just an interest of mine. I think it's fun. I'll let you know when I publish it if any of you have an interest in professional football, NFL football. It'll be kind of a fun. I didn't write it as a textbook, but it'll be kind of a fun book to explore defense and to think about the game, etc. Now, the reason I saw all that, by the way, subscribe to my channel, like this video if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. That's always helpful in boosting the channel and motivates me to make more videos, to be honest with you. YouTube is a hard business, man. I want that Lambo, but it's tough. Like, it's very competitive, and turns out when you're a big, fat talking head, the videos aren't that entertaining. I get it, man. But when I wanted to share this, the reason I made this video is I wanted to share this study with you that I had found as part of my research for the book. And it's called The Relationship Between Injury Rate and Winning in the National Football League by LaPlaza and Elliott. This was published in 2021 in the International Journal of Strength Conditioning. So the way that this was broken down was the injury rank was determined within each season. So the teams that had the least amount of missed games would be rated as number one, right, for that season. So like by the way, the seasons were. So looking at the study, interesting. It was 10 seasons, 2010 to 2019. The data was collected, and it's very off of a pro football reference website, which I'm using for the book, which I find very helpful and valuable. And the data has been used in other research as well, so we're assuming it's good data. But part of that data is that website, you can go visit yourself, has injury data. And so what these authors is they pulled all the injury data off and basically calculated how many missed games the starters had for offense and defense. And within that year, so let's say 2015, if a team, the teams that if a team had the least amount of missed games from their starters, they were considered ranked number one, right? So the team that had the most amount of injuries that season. So in other words, the team could change. Like the Bears could be number one. They had the least amount of injuries one year, and then they could be the worst the next year, right? So it's not necessarily a team is ranked over time. It's just which team had the least amount of injuries to which team had the most amount of injuries. So a number one ranking means that you had the least amount of injuries per season. So this is how injury was quantified. Injury rate, it was a ranking within the season. And then you can look at the rankings each year and see what the winning percentage was for the number one team each year. Like the team that had the least amount of injuries, did they have the most amount of wins, right? And that's what the study attempted to do then. And looked at aforementioned wins, like how many wins per season did it have, winning percentage, playoff appearances, and then draft ranking, okay? Draft ranking. And if you don't know anything about the NFL, the worst team usually gets the first pick, right? It's not like the NBA where they have a lottery and they put all the ping pong balls in, so the worst team gets more ping pong balls. The NFL is a little more concrete in that the worst team. Now, you can trade your draft picks, which could factor into these rankings, right? At least in terms of the draft rankings, okay? I'm not really interested in the draft stuff, to be honest with you. I'm more interested in the wins and the winning percentage and the playoff appearances, okay? So let me give you kind of a landscape of this. It's really interesting. So let's start with winning percentage, okay, and injury rank. All right. So the authors did a nice job of breaking this also down in quintiles. So the top 25, 51 to 75% injury. We're talking about injury ranking here. So the top 25 was ranking 1 through 8. It's top 8 teams in terms of missed time. So the higher ranking means they missed less time. Okay. And then it was broken 9 to 16, 7 to 14. And 25 to 30. I say quintile. I should say quartiles. Forgive me. Quartiles. So, of the top 8 teams, what was their winning percentage? Well, on average, it was .538. So over 500. If you look at the bottom 8 teams, their winning percentage was .433. Okay, so that's a big difference. Okay, what does that look like in actual number of wins then? And I'll explain why these authors did this, by the way. this study. It's just, keep in mind, it's a strength conditioning journal, and I think this is actually brilliant what they did. If you look at the number of wins, then there's this is before the NFL went to 17 games. I think they're going to try to kill these guys. They're good. Let's do 100-game seasons. Let's just have football on year-round, and then whoever survives wins. Right? How many of these guys are still standing? It's crazy how many games these have. There was a study I saw that the less, in the COVID year when there was less preseason game, there was more injuries. That probably had to do with just total camp being cut down, but it was like preparation might be more important than actual playing. Like the quality of football, if you're missing, I'm doing a study book, looking at injury rate and elite players. If you lose your elite players, people don't watch, and teams lose. Like I think the NFL is kind of shooting itself in the foot as a sidebar. It'd be better to have 14 games and be able to keep some of your star players on the field. People would be more excited about the games than have half the league with backup quarterbacks playing because they're all hurt because the frickin' season is so long. I just don't think that's fair to the athletes. So, money, baby. Anyway. Okay, so back to the number of actual wins of the top 8 teams. So again, less injuries, 9 wins per season. That would play into the 538 winning percentage. And the bottom 25 was 7 wins. So they again below a winning season. Okay, so more less injuries, more wins. Shocker, right? Let's look at. I'll mention the draft data, by the way, but I'm more interested in these other things. Let's see. Playoff appearances. That's what I wanted to show. So they looked at playoff appearances then. Okay. So the top 8 teams, again, less injured, over the course of 10 years had 40 playoff appearances. All right. 40 playoff appearances. That's an N of 33% of the total playoff appearances was from this group. Okay. The least or the most injured, 21 appearances, 18% of the games played in the playoffs. Appearances, not games, excuse me. Appearances were from the lower half. So 40 appearances to 21. So it's half, right? From the top to the bottom, at least. Half. In the middle was like 33 and 26. So there's a linear decline, right? In playoff appearances. I should mention that as well with the other metrics I mentioned, like number of games won and the number of and the winning percentages. It's a linear relationship. Meaning it doesn't appear to be like, and then there's a cliff after one. It's a linear. Okay. Now I'm eyeballing it, but I'll just say, how about this? A fairly linear relationship. Okay. I think it's really important. And now this isn't like new information for NFL teams. The NBA was ahead of the game, in my opinion, when it came to this metric of injuries, and really, time lost is a big statistic, right? And remember what this journal is, a strength conditioning journal. So these authors are making the case that better strength conditioning and more emphasis on strength conditioning, and just sports medicine medicine staff in general is wise. Like professional soccer, football has been ahead of this for a long time, right? If you're going to pay someone $100 million, probably should spend a lot of time to make sure the athlete is not only fit and performing at a high level, but has you want to make sure the athlete is going to stay as healthy as possible. If you lose your star player, you've lost not only the money you paid him or her, you're going to lose wins, and that's merch, that's TV deals, that's money. Okay. I mean, like it or not, professional sports is all about money. Okay. And so not surprising then, when we're looking at the NFL, they're finally starting to get on board. I remember years ago, Michael Vick, who's a quarterback for the Eagles, this was, I can't remember, 10 years ago, maybe now, might be a little longer now. I don't remember. But even then I was like, he was talking about, they make us watch our food here now. And I'm like, wow, you weren't doing that before? It just kind of shows you how backwards the NFL has been compared to other leagues. I think they're catching up, but it's been completely backward, or not backwards, but just behind the times, behind taking care of these athletes. The NBA and the American sports system has been, in my opinion, the best. Hockey's pretty good too, but NBA has been by far the best. Draft order, by the way. So the least injured teams, 18.9 was a draft, and then 13.6 for the worst. Okay, so in other words, in this case, it's a little backwards. So the 13.6 means they got a higher draft, which makes sense because they're a worse team, right? 18.9 was the average for the teams that were that had the least amount of injuries. So in other words, they're drafting later in the draft, which will make sense because the better teams don't get to draft as early. Okay, so if you think about this, and I'll finish with this. Some of you may not be interested, some may not. But if there's injuries, This is a classic example. This was in basketball years ago when, this is a long time ago. Some of you may not realize who these people are, but David Robinson was a dominant player for the Spurs. He got hurt one year. He was out the whole season. The Spurs were awful. Well, they got the number 1 pick the next year, and just so happened they got Tim Duncan. And then David Robinson came back, and boom, they were a championship team, just like that. So that's why the NBA went to the lottery system, because of the new teams would start to throw. They purposely lose games. And so the idea was like, well, it's not a guarantee that you get the number 1 spot if you're the worst team, but there's a chance. So with the NFL, you could hypothetically throw the rest of your season and get a high draft pick if you thought that you could get the next franchise quarterback. The NFL's, well, all these professional sports is a crapshoot, right? And evaluating talent, in my opinion. Anyway, so hope you found that interesting. If you don't like sports statistics or anything like that, probably, or football, or, it probably was not interested at all, but I thought this was a really interesting study. I hadn't seen anything this comprehensive or this straightforward in terms of injuries and winning and all these other important variables. And certainly this is from a strength conditioning perspective. So this makes the case again that a strength conditioning coach is a vital piece of a sports performance program, or a vital piece of a sports team. Because if the athletes can stay healthy, and I know, like, talking with a former NBA coach, who was a coach for a long time, and looking at Charlie, what was his, Weingroff is his name, when he was with the 76ers, that's the number 1 metric they use is how many missed games, right? That's it. It is not back squat. It's how many games do they miss? Because if you don't have a star player on the floor and it comes to the NBA, you're not going to win. If you're not going to win, you don't draw attention. You don't make as much money. And so I think the same thing with the NFL here. It's strength conditioning isn't all about performance, especially at the elite level. These athletes are already fantastic athletes. Doesn't mean they can't get better, but the real crux here. And I remember Daryl Johnson saying this years ago at an NCAA conference. He wanted to reach a certain metric every. Daryl Johnson played for the Cowboys. He was a fullback. He wanted to reach a metric every year before the season started. So X squat, X bench. He wasn't trying to improve. He just wanted to get back to those numbers every year because he knew that's where he needed to be physically before the season started. And so, that makes sense when you look at elite sports in general, that it's kind of like a bottom threshold, like must be reached in order to, but once you're in elite sport, there's other factors. And one of those factors is staying healthy, right? So, everybody, just hypothetically, everybody can squat 500. And if you can't squat 500, you can't be in the club. But once you're in the 500 club, then there's other factors that are going to play into. See this endurance sport with VO2 max and lactate threshold. And we see it across the board. It's kind of fascinating when you look at sports that way. All right. Again, I hope you found that interesting. If not, I'm really sorry. I'll see you guys in the next video.